One of my great heroes was a man called Malcolm Muggeridge. In the early days of my conversion, I started to read Muggeridge because he was a brilliant user of language in a way I had never read anybody else. Muggeridge himself was a latecomer to Jesus Christ, possibly the greatest British journalist of the 20th century, a toss-up between him and G.K. Chesterton, both of them who ended up becoming moralist philosophers. I had the privilege of being with Muggeridge just 9 months before he died at his home in England and spending one of the finest afternoons I'd ever spent in my life as he talked of his younger days and his own wanderings, and we talked about the incident I'm now going to mention to you. When he was a young professor of journalism in India, he loved the Indian people. He stepped out of his quarters one morning and went into the river to swim. And as he was swimming at dawn, way out in the distance, he saw the silhouetted figure of a woman getting into the river far away from him. And he was a lustful type of individual. He decided he would make a go for her. Started to swim in her direction, and he said in his heart there was a voice telling him, no, don't. But he said, I smothered that voice and swam as hard as I could in her direction. And as I came closer and closer, the woman herself, of course, probably by this point, stunned that someone was invading her privacy, especially as she saw a white man emerge from the waters. And as he shook the water off his face, all he could see was a woman covering herself like that. And he said, I was shocked that I was looking into the face and the body of a woman with leprosy. Her fingers were gone. Her nostrils were gone. Her lips were gone. Her eyes looked almost like a gargoyle peering out of a wall somewhere. And Muggeridge said, I was on the verge of saying, what a horrible, ugly woman. Till he said, I paused and realized, no, I've got this wrong. It wasn't a horrible, ugly woman. It was this horrible, ugly heart with which I was living. Take the whole issue of pornography today, making its billions with supposedly the most beautiful human beings on the face of the earth, stirring up within you the ugliest passions you can ever have. Passions that no human being can ever fulfill. No human being can ever fulfill, because it takes away the possibility of the impact of a person and puts in its place a feeling, a desire as a supreme pursuit to which you go, which no person can ultimately satisfy. That's what the Bible talks about. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life. Jesus describes your heart and mine perfectly when he says the heart is sinful and desperately wicked above all things. Do you know when the philosopher Nietzsche in 1900, before he died at the age of 54, said God is dead in the 19th century, and then he went on to say a universal madness will break out in the 20th century, and the 20th century will become the bloodiest century in history. He made the pronouncement, both of which took place. He took the first step, and the last 13 years of his life he spent insane. And in the 20th century, we killed more people on the battlefield than the previous 19 put together, and the weapons of warfare are piling up. Take a look at your heart. You know why? On the day you see your heart is desperately wicked in need of a Savior, you could become an answer rather than just another question. Description of my condition, the provision for my malady. This is the only answer in the world that offers you a Savior. The only answer in the world that offers you a Savior. Some years ago, I had the privilege of speaking at the United Nations prayer breakfast. They asked me to speak on the search for absolutes in a relativistic culture. Now, that's a tough subject for anywhere. And especially in the early hours of the morning, at just about before breakfast, to speak to people from so many countries and walk very cautiously, it was a toughie. You can't come in your face. You have to take about 16 minutes or so, 15 minutes to talk in terms of general understanding, and the last 2 to 3 minutes bring an answer from the Christian perspective. So I said this to them. I said, there are 4 areas in which you look for absolutes: evil, justice, love, and forgiveness. Evil, justice, love, and forgiveness. I said, you talk about evil empires when you get together here. What do you mean by that? You look for just society. What do you mean by justice? You leave your loved ones back home and you are here and you miss them. You know what love is all about, especially when you miss your loved ones so much. And then some of you are gonna blow it, you'll make mistakes, and you'll want to be forgiven. Evil, justice, love, and forgiveness. They were listening at the edge of their seats. I said, I have just 2 or 3 minutes left. I want to ask you this question. Where in the world did these 4 converge at a moment in history? Where did evil, justice, love, and forgiveness converge at a moment in history? I said, can I take you to a hill called Calvary and show you the person of Jesus Christ, who shows you the evil in your heart and mine, who was just and the justifier, who loved us so greatly to give himself for us. And he said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing. The person of Jesus Christ. You know what? When I finished that talk, as the ambassadors lined up, one of the ambassadors came to me and he said, Mr. Zacharias, I come from an atheistic country. I don't want to be here. My president commanded that I come here. And every day I wake up and I wonder, what am I doing here? Why am I here? He said, today I have found my answer. I came here to find God and to find Jesus Christ in my life. One more simple illustration. Years ago, I had the privilege of being at a gathering in Ramallah, Jerusalem, talking to one of the 4 founders of Hamas. I was taken by some friends, and he was agitated. He'd served years in prison, solidly built guy. He'd lost several of his children. And at the end of it, the leader of our group asked if each one of us 5 had a question for him. Because it was a private meeting, I won't tell you what my question was, and nor will I tell you his answer. But when he finished answering, I looked at him and I said, Sheikh, I don't like your answer. I really don't like your answer. I said, but let me tell you something, and you and I may never see each other again. Not far from where you and I are sitting is a hill. 3,000 years ago, a man by the name of Abraham took his son up that hill. Please, let's not debate right now which son it was. And he just looked at me. I said, we know he took his son up that hill to offer him as a sacrifice of his faith in God. And just as the axe is about to come down, God says, stop, stop. I myself will provide. I said, do you remember that story? He said, yes. I said, we are sitting very close to another hill. 2,000 years ago, God took his own son up there and provided what he promised he would. Sheikh, my comment to you is this: until you and I receive the son that God has provided, we will be offering our own sons and daughters on the battlefields of this world for position, for power, and for land, and for prestige. He just looked at me, and the Archbishop who was leading the delegation figured it was time to go. So I was walking away, about to go down the stairs, and the Archbishop put his arm around me. He said, Ravi. I thought, oh, here it comes. He said, that was of God. I said, I sure hope so. We walked out, and since the Archbishop was the guest of honor, the Sheikh was bidding goodbye to him, but suddenly I saw him running towards me, and he turned me around. Solidly built guy. And with 2 titanium rods in my back, I figured I was going to be history. He patted me on my face, kissed me on both sides of my face, and he said to me, Mr. Zacharias, you're a good man. I hope I will see you again someday. And I saw him wipe that tear away. Do you know what's going on in the Middle East today? A lot. Can I simplify it to one statement? It's 3,000 years of history and the logic of unforgiveness. 3,000 years, or more than that, 5,000 years of history and the logic of unforgiveness. And what I want to say to you is this. Forgiveness is so easily spoken of. You ask a Buddhist or a Hindu, what do you know about forgiveness? You know what they'll say to you? Karma, karma, karma. I pay my debt. I have to pay. You ask a Muslim, do you know you're going to enter paradise? He'll say, no, I'm never certain. My good deeds will have to outweigh my bad deeds. These are not pejorative statements. These are doctrinally legitimate statements of what they believe. You pay, you pay, you pay. Christ offers you forgiveness by paying the penalty himself. And so the elementary school teacher writes this. He came to my desk with a quivering lip. The lesson was done. Have you a new sheet for me, dear teacher? I've spoiled this one. I took his sheet all soiled and blotted, gave him a new one all unspotted, and into his tired heart I cried, do better now, my child. I went to the throne with a trembling heart. The day was done. Have you a new day for me, dear master? I've spoiled this one. He took my day all soiled and blotted, gave me a new one all unspotted, and into my tired heart he cried, do better now, my child. God's forgiveness is his provision for you and for me. Thirdly, his equipment in suffering. His equipment in suffering. I wrote a book along with my colleague from Oxford, Vince Vitale. It's called Why Suffering? And one of my chapters included how the various other worldviews deal with suffering. There are no answers there. There are no answers there. But you turn to the gospel writers and you turn to the teachings of Jesus, who reminds you and me that he took our suffering, took our wounds, took our transgressions, and not only that, how he equips us, how he empowers us, how he indwells us in order to be able to walk through this lonely life and through this journey. You may be feeling some pain today. I don't know what it is. It may be a relationship that is just broken. It may be lines you have crossed. It may be physical maladies that you're nurturing. It may be financial struggles. It may be your home that you're weeping over and struggle to find some positive responses in a time like this. Suffering is a real part of life.